So we have got together with our colleagues from different spheres, and we will talk not only about cultural heritage, but about many other different things. Today, we will discuss about the institutional capacities and whether we need it and how we can turn that attention that we receive to Ukraine from many different countries into something material, into projects that would be useful to our country and to the sector of Ukrainian culture in general. I will start from presenting our participants today. Many speakers will join us a little bit later. So we have with us Volodymyr Shayko, General Director of Ukrainian Institute, Olesya Ostrovska-Luta, Head of the Mistecki Arsenal National Art Museum, Yulia Vahanova, Acting Head of the Bogdan and Varvara Khanenko National Museum of Ukraine, Yuri Savchuk. Yuri, can you please tell us what is the right title of your museum right now? The National Museum of History of Ukraine in the Second World War. But right now, we are looking over a new title of our museum. Thank you so much, Yuri. We have with us online Olena Balun, coordinator of Ukraine Art Aid Center from Germany. And we also have with us another speaker, Olena Honcharuk. Recently, Olena has won the competition to become the General Director of Alexander Dovzhenko National Center, and we hope that soon she will legally become the General Director. So as you see right now, we have a lot of people here. The speakers are very different. Mostly these are head of different cultural institutions, and it seems to me that all those cultural institutions are capable enough to represent Ukrainian culture abroad. That is why I would like to ask our speakers whether we have enough institutions, whether we have enough capacity, and how we can scale up this capacity, and how do we respond to those thousands of requests from our partners abroad. We have a lot of national tasks, we have a lot of external tasks as well. So in any case, we have to commit, and probably we shall be quite ambitious. So today I would like to start from the question to you, Volodymyr, because cultural diplomacy, this is the mandate of the Ukrainian Institute. And last year, as many other institutions of Ukraine, you lacked budget, you had a lot of tasks, but it was impossible to perform them using the state funds. But quite successfully, you found ways to do that. Your resilience, the resilience of your institutions was an inspiration to all of us, because you managed to streamline the work of your institution and to perform those tasks that you had planned for in 2022. On the other hand, your mandate provides for representation of Ukrainian culture abroad. And I would like to ask you the question. You probably do not have to respond to the grassroots requests. At the level of your institutions, you perform your institution tasks. But tell me, how do you select projects that might represent Ukrainian culture abroad? How do you help them? How do you help develop those projects that represent Ukraine abroad? I've heard from you, and I fully agree that Ukrainian cultural product, which is aimed at the national audience, is not only the one that might be presented for the external audience. So probably there are some peculiarities, and you have special tasks. You are the one who programs these tasks. So how do we use this interest in Ukraine in order to present our culture for everyone? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your questions. Yes, that's true. This is now such a situation with a huge demand for Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian information, when people are eager to know more about Ukraine. There is a huge demand for information about Ukraine, for cooperation with Ukrainians, because the world has woken on the 24th of February and finally understood that Ukraine exists, Ukraine resists, and Ukraine fights for its independence. And of course, the world wants to know more about Ukraine, about the country that has spiked this attention. So Ukraine is an agent, not only an object in international policy and cultural diplomacy. It seems to me that it also, but at the same time, we have decreased institutional capacity, decreased capacity in terms of content or proposals or institutional capacities that we have in Ukraine in order to meet all these huge information demand to Ukraine and about Ukraine. Because I'm sure that, the Ministry of Culture and all people present here understand really well that we receive a lot of requests, a lot of demands, a lot of questions. People ask to provide us content or to become their partners or just to give a lecture. There is a huge demand, but in my subjective opinion is that we are not always ready to adequately respond to all of this. Because part of our cultural content has been created for internal consumption, and we didn't even think that we would be able to export it to show to the foreign audience and to answer the question of foreign audiences about Ukraine, because sometimes we need completely different content. It seems to me that we really lack that inside Ukraine. We need this export-oriented cultural products, cultural vision of what we are doing here within Ukrainian culture. On the other hand, the war has weakened many institutions, many agents. Unfortunately, right now we face the challenges that we will lack Ukrainian cinema, contemporary Ukrainian cinema, which we can show at different film festivals. So the previous cycle of cinema production will end soon, and we still use those films that have been released before. But for example, we have almost nothing for the second cycle of the film festivals this year. We have a lot of documentaries, but when it comes to fiction films, we have a problem. There are a lot of other cultural products that we lack because of the war. The damage that the war has caused to the cultural sphere in Ukraine is evident right now. It is obvious for us as a foreign institution that we have to create new products. So we need to initiate new projects, and we should not wait until they come from somewhere. We get requests from our international partners, because this is always a twofold process. We don't always have to show what we like. We also have to meet the demand, to meet the interest of the audience, taking into account the knowledge of Ukraine, about Ukraine, that this audience has. That is why we have to delve deeper into this kind of work, and not just hope that we will work with a ready product. Thank you so much, Volodymyr. So exactly my thoughts, exactly my feelings about what the situation is. Sometimes we have to perform some kind of agency curator work when creating new products or projects. But in any case, it seems to me that there are institutions that are capable of doing that. Of course, they are but a few, but they exist. So what do we need for these institutions to be more capable? And what it is, institutional capacity? Olesa, I would like to ask you this question, because very often I hear that culture just needs to be supported financially, and it will have tackle a lot of issues. Of course, we must have financial resources, but what kind of skills, knowledge, competencies, networking, project management, communication skills we lack? Or is it enough, taking into account your experience, the experience of your institution, and taking into account of what you see right now? Good afternoon. I am happy to be here with you. I fully agree with what Volodymyr has just said. There is a huge demand. I have two important conclusions from 2022 in terms of our international activity, not only of Mostetsky Arsenal, but in general of Ukrainian cultural institutions. First, international presence of Ukraine is possible when there is a twofold, two-direction movement. It's not only us wanting to be on the international scene, but also they wanting us to be there. So in 2022, there was a huge demand, the first one since 1991. So finally, we can be equals. There is a famous quote that culture becomes important where there is economic welfare. Economically developed countries, so they are also culturally attractive. It seems to me that Ukraine quite fits into this model, but in a little bit different way. The fact that Ukrainian society and Ukrainian state has turned out to be very resilient, including in the military area, has spiked this interest into our culture. You have to have something else rather than just artistic activity in order for international scene to be open for you. On the other hand, I also noticed that this is quite obvious that the problem of all cultural institutions of Ukraine is the lack of human resources. We don't have enough people. We wanted to be present on the international scene, but at the Mostetsky Arsenal, we have 100 employees, and we have at least 25 more. Our mandate of working inside Ukraine is still there, and our responsibilities have become even bigger because we have a lot of challenges related to safety and security of people, of artifacts, of artworks that are being created right now. That is why we have a lot of tasks to do internally, but there is also a huge demand from abroad. So partly it is compensated by the presence of financial resources, but unfortunately we don't have much money. The Ukrainian formula of working when you lack money. So what do we do when we lack money? It is compensated by a huge amount of work, very often low paid or not paid at all. All my professional life, starting from the mid-90s, I notice the same process. We value work a lot and we love working hard. So we just need more people. We all know that people require not only more people, but we need more capacities. We need people who have skills and knowledge and everything. We need a lot of people who speak foreign languages. This is a must-have. This is absolutely necessary. It seems to me that all Ukrainian organizations, not only in the cultural area, but in different areas, have faced this challenge. We need to speak the same language with our foreign partners. Volodymyr has also mentioned the importance of cultural content for import. Yes, we can use this terminology, but in order to facilitate this process, so you don't have to create two contents for internal and external audience, it is necessary to create something that has a national but also international dimension for import and for export. Of course, it will have to be adapted for the international audience, but it's a little bit different. To do that, you need people who are capable of thinking globally, who have enough knowledge in order to be on par, to have a dialogue with the universities in the UK or Germany or France, where you have people who can produce very important and interesting things. It all requires development. It all requires education. And in our case, it's different. We need to move really fast. We need to use as much potential as possible to use and jump at every opportunity. So that's the situation right now. On the other hand, our experience of the last year showed that our partners trust us a lot. Our international partners trust us more than any time before. Mostecki Arsenal works with a museum in Tallinn. This is an artistic museum, the most important in Estonia. It was selected as the European Museum of the Year. So this is a highly reputable institution. This museum has reached out to us with a proposal to create something for Estonia, to create a version of exhibition Futuromarenia, which was presented in Mostecki Arsenal in Kyiv. It closed just before on the eve of the full-scale invasion. We wanted to continue it, but we thought that it would be dangerous. That is why we had to wrap it up. After this proposal, we, of course, very actively started negotiating with the museum. But it's not about providing the artworks. We are doing it in a completely different way. So the trust on behalf of this museum is huge. I'm very proud of our cooperation. First, we have to recreate the concept. And then second, Mostecki Arsenal is huge in terms of the facility itself. It is very big. And the exhibition is also big. The task is to say the same, but in a smaller format, on a smaller scale. This is our second challenge. We need to create an exposition, to recreate design, to do something else. The exhibition designer has to do that. Lera Voyevska, this is our exhibition designer. She will have to work. Olga Melnik from the Mostecki Arsenal is responsible for the exposition. She selects the text. She selects the artwork. The texts must be rewritten and translated from English and Ukrainian into Estonian. Multimedia installations will have to be created once again. We also have a public program. We are really happy to cooperate with Dovzhenko Center. We want to make it as interesting as possible for the Estonian audience. So in any case, sometimes we joke that this is as if we did an exhibition in Ukraine, but not in Ukraine, but at a huge distance. So we are doing this for the very first time. This is an experiment for us. It is challenging, but interesting at the same time. We work with our partners, museums. They really like this cooperation. These are music and cultural museums all over Ukraine, in Dnipro included. And we also have a lot of trust from our Estonian partners. They say, you do the way you want it, and we will support you. We take a look. If something is wrong in our opinion, we will tell you. But up until now, everything is okay. I really like our team, and we hope that this cooperation will provide us with new experience. I'm only afraid that by the end of this project, by the end of the war, we will have the book Arsenal together with the Dovzhenko Center. The book Arsenal will present its book program at the Vilnius book market. So I'll just take a look at my team, and I'm afraid that they might be burned out very quickly because everybody is exhausted. Alyssa, thank you so much. You have raised important issues that I would like to pay attention to, and then I would like to use your words to ask following questions. Well, first, people are the most valuable asset that we have. This is a problem that we all lack because there is a huge deficit, a huge lack. A lot of people have left Ukraine, and we are not sure whether they will come back. So we have this challenge of providing our people with to work with these people. We need to understand how to support these people financially and emotionally. Trust. This is a second very important thing, and I'd like to focus our attention on that because any connections with international partners, national and international partners, are based on trust. It is impossible to take this trust out from nowhere. We are now in this unique situation when there is an increased interest in Ukraine, and it is important to use this chance. So we cannot breach this trust. We need to use it in order to build long-term relations based on trust. Otherwise, we will just fail.
Otherwise, we will lose this after a short period of attention. And external trust this bridge that we want to build is based on how to throw this bridge to you, so to speak, because trust within in institutions is one thing, and external trust is another thing. We are moving toward the European Union now. We have quite big commitments. But now we hear very years of your successful activity mean that your partners are interested in what is happening. This is also an issue for us. How can we insist on support of our international partners, sponsors, donors, if we cannot ensure sustainability within the country? My question is, those challenges that you faced threaten not just the stability of the institution, but the system in general, because there is no trust to the system. How can you build plans if you don't know what will happen to the institution tomorrow? How do you handle this? What are the secrets of your resilience? Hello, I am really very happy to be with you today. It is a breath of which we significantly lack. But I think it is also the representatives of the system that should answer this question. Because the Dovzhenko Center and people in it have put a lot of effort into resisting the pressure. And on the other hand, the question is why this pressure is happening. And we constantly have to answer the question why or for what. And in order for the institution to be sustainable, it identifies a certain mission for itself or a certain purpose for which it exists. The center has identified this purpose for itself. Several years ago, we understood that we had to form the idea of what is Ukrainian cinema and explain it. And now we understand that this has turned into work for national security in itself. We identified this mission after the first presentations by the president, when the invasion started and the president of the country said that we will resist and we will defend ourselves. I felt this impulse. And together with the team, we came up with this vision that the Dovzhenko Center exists in order to make the world and Ukraine fall in love with Ukrainian cinema. Because love has strength for victory in order to move on, to work. Maybe it sounds too romantic, but there is a lot of work in its basis, because this is the knowledge that helped us talk about the country and also what Volodymyr started with. Before we say something to the world about ourselves, we have to start speaking about this. And I know that many colleagues are paying a lot of attention to figuring out who they are, who we are. The center now has to protect itself against those who I think would have to ensure an environment for our development and productive functioning, because we understand that it is difficult to develop during the war, although Ukraine does demonstrate this ability. We are not just surviving, we are growing. And these are parallel processes. Perhaps we are catching up with things that we failed to figure out before, and now it is taking place at an accelerated pace. But while we are forced to interact, Maybe we don't want to interact with them now because it has agency, why the center needs to exist. Is this promotion of cinema? Is this preservation of the heritage? Is this cultural diplomacy? And this black hole, when there is another war within this war, makes us stronger in the end. It makes us more tired. And I understand that people, I guess, need more support in the situation. So I don't have a specific recipe of how to fight against these internal threats. I understand that we work on the basis of openness and dignity. I feel very strong support of my team in this sense. So if this dignity remains within, the governing agency should just understand this. Thank you, Olena. Openness and dignity. I feel like these values should be inherent in the cultural sector. It is also about the ability to cooperate and the possibility to cooperate. Yuri, I would like to give you the floor now, and I would like to move on to you. I would like to bring up the successful experience. I will explain why it is successful. Last year, you organized an enormous number of exhibitions in Ukraine and abroad. The readiness for cooperation of your institution with communities that are not directly connected with culture, the way you work with the armed forces, for instance, with the state emergency service. You were among the first to go to the occupied territories. You were collecting artifacts which are part of the documentary evidence of what we are going through. And you were able to achieve this despite possible external pressure, because Europeans probably didn't want to see a lot of difficult things. And the Ministry of Culture often said that we don't want horrible images, we don't want horrible stories. It's okay to speak about culture, but about something peaceful, something beautiful, some possible future dialogue, some future project. But let's not speak about difficult things. It seems to me that your openness is what gave a boost to that number of projects. And since the very beginning of your work in this position, you were open to cooperation with artists, with the military, with medical workers, with psychologists. The number of people involved in your project is enormous. What is your motivation for this? How do you see the mission of your institution? You said that you are now working on redefining this mission, right? Hello, dear listener, dear viewers. Halina, thank you for the invitation to speak in the discussion. I am happy to share my thoughts and my comments about the experience and the general situation. First, I want to say that I fully agree with the messages and thoughts expressed by the previous speakers. We are trying to implement everything that has been discussed in our own work. And I would like to draw your attention to one specific point. You spoke about the resilience that our country has shown during the war in these very difficult conditions. And this is the result of a long social process. And I think that the country overall, not civil society, but also the cultural sector, have acquired a certain potential. We have been developing over this time. And the presence of leaders that I have the honor of sitting next to today show that we are ready to new solutions, ready for new people. I'm speaking about people primarily. And in my own experience, these initiatives that are visible now as a result of almost 20 years of experience in international cooperation with other institutions. Before answering your specific question, I remember it well. I want to say the following. Cultural diplomacy is a delicate issue. The interest of representatives and leaders of institutions, we understand that generally we have the same principle. We have our partners who will talk about difficulties with finances, there are new people who have been in new positions for quite a short time. And their list of difficulties is just as big as ours. I would like to point out that the most difficult thing is taking the first step to destroy this barrier that arose due to certain circumstances. And you know how we did this? In September, on the 21st of September, in Lithuania, we opened the first museum exhibition of Ukraine abroad in Europe, in the status of Ukraine as an EU candidate. And we highlighted this. And most importantly, that exhibition was attended by directors and representatives of 5 countries. It is difficult to meet each other for various reasons, but there was a big meeting there. And if we have 5 suggestions we discuss and one of them is implemented, that's a success. And while we are talking here, our museum is loading trucks to 2 countries, Latvia and Estonia. There will be our exhibition there dedicated to the anniversary of the full-scale invasion. And for business, for culture, for science, this is the first time. What is for the first time? The first time we represent exhibitions with artifacts about the ongoing war and created during the ongoing war. And the fact that our colleagues could see this exhibition in Lithuania, they saw what Lisa spoke about, they saw the quality of our work, they saw the content, means that they see Ukraine in a completely new light, because there is a lack of information that is brought up. We need to show that we are competitive. I support what has been said, that yes, we need to speak their language, not just English. We need to speak the language of competition, language of diplomacy. We need to have the dignity that we are speaking about. We need to look for media ways. All these things that are the norm for cultural activity, they are working here as well. We are saying that we fight within the system of common values. And we are trying to do all of this. I will not hide behind a well-known line. I will say that great things require full great desire. And I am somewhat proud to say as a leader that according to our staff, we have very, very few, like I would say fewer than 5 people who are furloughed, and just also fewer than 5 people abroad. And now we are going to have our second year of a full-fledged space where we work, fully equipped space, and will give us an opportunity to return 99% of our people to work and show what we are striving for. The comment about the process of internal work of our institution is a bit different, but this has already been mentioned here. You know, the management toolkit is the same. We need to be dynamic. If we go to the occupied territories in a month or in a week, it's a completely different image, and we are losing the opportunity to see this historic memory. We visited all the occupied territories without exception, but we were there in day 2. In Kherson, for example, there wasn't curfew, there was no order yet. People were in the square, outside the whole night. And when you observe all of this, it's a completely different quality of perception, and later of reflection, later of reproduction. Our materials are often referenced by the Prosecutor General's office. And they asked us, how did you get these materials? I will say, honestly, we have very good relations with the prosecutor's office. We are preparing an exposition for the International Forum of Prosecutors. So we are working on our relationship. And after months have passed, they respond in a very formal manner. They are saying that objects need to be stored in specific places, that's in months. But when you go there on day 2, everything is right there. You don't have any formal mechanisms. Everything is available to you. So the dynamic work is available. We were speaking about the power of civil society today. We need to be flexible today. We need to be very rapid and very mobile in everything. We need to be aware of what the society lives and breathes. We need to be aware how the country fights. And our team doesn't really focus on difficulties, because we can compare it to the territories near the front line. We can compare it with what happens there, and we see it, we document it. The Museum of Traumatic History is underway, and we are working on this as our mission. And I think we see today that our museum is transforming.
So there are a lot of giants, different funds until United 24. All of these stakeholders, they want to do it to make the support of the army public with the view of the monument to the motherland of Ukraine. So before the war, I remember the global problem of those years is to change the symbols on the symbol on the shield of the motherland monument in Kiev. We now have different tasks to recreate the exposition of this of our museum, and this change of the national symbol on the shield is the only one task. We have a lot of tasks to do right now. This is part of a broader strategic task. By using these activities, and other kinds of work, and this is how this process of public transformation goes on, to rethink, to transform our history. It is very important for all of us, for the military who take part in ceremonies. The public implement their projects at the background of the motherland monument. They do not look at the shield, they look at the entire museum as a place of memory. We see our museum as a memorial place, as a museum of future victory, not only victory of Ukraine, but of all the countries of the free world. Right now, we are in dialogue with our international partners, not only to discuss art and history, but also discuss architecture and many other things, because they are interested to help us. We have found many partners, and we are transforming our institution. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You have told us about collecting evidence. So this is something that you are not used to doing, but right now you have started doing that. And you also told us that there is a process to change the title. I like the title, the Museum of Future Victory, rather than the Museum of Traumatic History. But in any case, it is an important work to do. This is a challenging task. And it seems to me this is the time when we shall discuss that, when we shall think about all these. Because yesterday, as I know, there were people who said that we need to save what we have, and we have started thinking about how to rebuild what we had. Probably it's not the right way to rebuild everything as we had it before, but it's important to think about the future in any case. And here I would like to reach out to our next speaker, because it seems to me that your experience of Hanenko Museum, when you get into the empty museum to which you have grown accustomed since childhood as a traditional museum, right now you enter it and something is happening, something completely different. You host concerts, operas, performances. This is something which is not really what a museum is about, but you do have other functions. First, you have to protect the collections, and on the other hand, you need to add life to these empty halls. How do you manage to combine these two functions? I understand that you lack time, you lack people, but how do you manage to do that? Do you see it as an organic process, or is it a too complicated story? Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for organization of this event, and thank you for these questions. It seems to me that in this situation, what is happening with the Hanenko Museum and with other museums of Ukraine is very evident, because our case is not unique. This is a challenging but also very promising way to identify, to define the mission of an institution as it is. It shows us that An institution is important not only as a place to display artworks, works of art, depending on the profile of the museum, but it is necessary to understand the essence of this institution, what it shall do, what are the tasks, what are the ambitions. And it seems to me that this is an excellent time to do what we do, though the times are very challenging, of course, because there are a lot of fears, stressful situations, and expectations. The type of our work has changed. We no longer have familiar processes that we have been living with for the past few years, for the past dozens of years. But this is some kind of a stressful situation. We have been shaken, but under such difficult conditions, it might be even natural when everything is shaken and our old familiar system of interactions, self-presentation is shaken, then it might be for the good. Maybe it's the right time to do that, the right time to rethink everything, to become more open to such kind of changes. On the other hand, I would like to say that our work as the museum during the war, for me and for my colleagues, so this is also the question of our dignity of our profession that many people have mentioned already. By this, I mean that people who have a lot of skills, knowledge, experience, who are ready to share this experience, they must have the opportunity to be able to do that. This is exactly what makes us grow, be resilient, be resistant in this situation. That is why, of course, there are situations when an institution shall be closed due to different reasons. For example, if it has been damaged, or if we understand that if it is located close to the front line, it is impossible to open a museum. But in any case, we shall continue our work because we have a very important social task. So this is when it comes to what we do. Also, I would like to say that this is our way of showing, look, it hasn't been like this before. That's what is said everywhere. Well, before we didn't have such a war. Before we didn't have the opportunity to discuss the exclusion of Russia from the UN Security Council. Before we didn't discuss adhesion of Ukraine to NATO, but now it is different. Now we can do everything. We can initiate an exhibition of contemporary art in our museum. We can conduct an opera here. Now the opera house in Ukraine have initiated this project because they wanted to change the roles of musicians and audience. So when, for example, the place of the musician or an actor is fixed and the audience can work freely around the hall. This is an important experiment. It is important for people who work in the museum and for the audience who come and see, it is possible. This is a question of importance of the institution, development of the institution. These questions must be raised not only by the institution itself, something like art is important, but the audience might also ask such questions. Part of my colleagues finding it difficult to adapt. Most of us are finding it very difficult to adapt because people are conservative by nature. We need routine and stability, but this transformation comes from within. This transformation gives us the opportunity first to better understand ourselves and to describe ourselves in a different way. In this area, museum might be an excellent speaker when it comes to form and format. For example, by having no opportunity to present broadly collections of the museum, we have made several exhibitions in several places which have been accepted widely. There have been 5 exhibitions like that, and these are not museum exhibitions, but important spaces. These exhibitions have taken place in several universities in Germany and Switzerland, with photos of empty halls of the Hanenko Museum. This metaphor is an important message, and sometimes it works better than photos of damaged and destroyed buildings, because of this fragility, this emptiness. This is what has an important impact, and it tells about a lot of things. This format of talking about the war is also possible. It is also very powerful and widely accepted. I also paid attention to something else, to how our colleagues are working. We are invited as experts. So people really want to listen to us. People want to consult with us. Recently, I had an interesting experience of conducting a seminar, an internal seminar for workers of Imperial Museum in London. These were representatives of different departments of this museum who are working with the topic of the war. And it was a very interesting discussion of the seminar about how they talk about the war and how right now, talking about the war in Ukraine, they can avoid different cliches and mistakes that they might have had before. So we are the first people invited here to talk about it. And this is something absolutely new. This is a completely new story. Before, we didn't have such experience, and we were not invited to do that. Where we lag behind, these are the schemes that we have started developing inside. There is a huge demand for conversations about European art, about classic museum, about a museum of Eastern art or museum of Asian art or museum of Islam. Of course, these are processes of decolonization that are taking place all over the world. We haven't reached this point yet in Ukraine. That is why we cannot be part of this discussion. So we could have had, because our history might be a good example in such discussions. Our workers, part of them are now in Europe. They take an active part in studies on this topic. I hope that part of them will come back and they will be telling about all this here in Ukraine. So when it comes to preserving people, and of course preserving collections in the museum is very, very important for all museums. We fully understand that the period of this conservation has happened in many museums. We all understand that there are a lot of future processes awaiting us, second loss damages, this is how they are called, or what we call losses, secondary losses, right? This will happen through conditions and the state of preservation of collections. Unfortunately, they cannot be preserved under the conditions, under the proper conditions. In spring, we will start the conservation processes. It means that we will need technologies and experts and places and people who know how to do that, who can identify to which extent some artworks are damaged or not, because they need to understand whether, for example, there is mold on this particular artwork, whether it is damaged or not. This is also the question which we need to tackle as soon as possible inside the country. I mean, at the level of one of the political tasks. But on the other hand, this is a task that is very important and where we can look for partnerships with different museums, with different experts in many foreign countries. They are open for discussion, they are open for dialogue, they are open to help us with conservation processes or with other processes, because we understand when the war will end, we will need some time to do many things. For example, those collections that were evacuated from the eastern Ukraine will have to come back, but they will have to be preserved somewhere. Right now, this is the best time to study them, to conserve them, to preserve them. It seems to me that we need to pay attention to international partnerships with big museums. And we are open for discussion. Thank you so much. I would like to sum up what has been said, because it seems to me that what we just discussed has something similar. We need more experts in the cultural field. What does it mean? Yulia has described how many resources, how much resources, how many intellectual resources we need. This work needs to be done at a high expert level. For example, we have discussed the creation of special units within the armed forces of Ukraine. It means that we as a society need more financial resources in order to create intellectual resource. And how can we reach that? We cannot just get loan credits from other countries in order to be able to do everything in Ukraine. It seems to me that this is the question in the purely political dimension. The idea that comes to mind right now, we need to decrease losses in order to increase investments into these people, because we are not very attractive employers, to tell the truth, because our field is very regulated, the salaries are very low, the requirements to qualifications are very high. We need really qualified specialists, very loyal, as many colleagues have said, and unfortunately the salaries are very low. It's very difficult to find a lot of such motivated people. It means that our task is to create a special program to retain people, retain experts, highly qualified experts within Ukrainian institutions, but we need to find these financial resources from somewhere. As you know, I am for decreasing the regulation of the institutions. The institutions have to be regulated themselves. We need to take back resources from the higher level where they act as barriers. I know what I say is very abstract, but we have more resources at a lower level, as a level of institutions. We need these highly qualified people, super resilient, super resistant people in the field. We need them. They need to survive somehow. So the first question is, where do we get this resource? How do we retain those people that we have right now? And we have to scale up all this resource. Where do we take these people from? Those tasks that we have right now as the ministry, this is implementation of programs where experts from Ukraine go into study trips, internships, and receive competences abroad, then bring them back to Ukraine. But it's not a way out, because it won't be able to tackle the issue on a systemic level. On the other hand, to bring trainers here in Ukraine who would help us increase the capacity is also right now very difficult, because most people won't come here due to security concerns. The question is, how do we do that? Funds itself won't be able to tackle the issue. We have a lot of expertise. For example, Yulia Vahanova, probably you have heard about this. These trainings might get us more people who will be able to work. This is about networking inside the country, but we need to have stable resources. I am really sorry for reminding you of this. And we also have, we also need liberalization of this area. So Elena wanted to add something.
I say your previous statement actually was very in line with what I wanted to say, because it seems like we have nothing to complain about, because it is time for culture in the humanitarian sector in general. And in this sense, we have unlimited opportunities. There is demand for sentences that we produce. It is not just about creating endless content. There is a demand for meaning. And there is a temptation here to just constantly produce projects because we need to maintain the Ukrainian agenda for us and for the world. Is the movie Imitation Game with Cumberbatch, where there was a secret government group research, but they had this one task to decipher this code. I guess some of us also to work on those codes, so as opposed to just projects, which definitely we can produce in great numbers, but this also takes funding. But there is this need to interpret what is happening, where it came from, and what it can lead to. And that's something we need for the victory. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yulia wanted to add something. Oh, Yuri wanted to add a thing. Yuri, go ahead. I want to add that I know one sector where you can receive an impulse without extra spending. Where you can open new material prospects. And that's legislation. I have a specific example about that. Several years ago, considering that I was the head of the State Service for Control of Border Crossing Cultural Assets, I had an opportunity to look at the statistical data were called political arithmetic back in the 17th century. And we saw that the museum sector overall in our country, which is at the heart of Europe and which is the second largest in Europe, produced the number of exhibitions was crossed the border at the level of an average European museum. One museum. So one country did as much as one museum in Europe. And considering the current demand for information, and we're speaking about different aspects here, how many additional resources are necessary, or what is necessary? Maybe the change of legislation is necessary. There is no other way. We just need to recognize this. We need to understand this. If last year, our one museum worked with 12 countries, yes, some of them were photo exhibitions. This means location, this means rent, this means communication, permits, content. But as we are starting in January, in February, I know that the permit system is very slow. It cannot handle work with one single museum. We are speaking about digitization today, about a powerful resource and the demands of of legislation include a specific format of a picture. The guarantee letter, we sign a contract. We are speaking about the content, about financial sanctions, about punishment. You see, there is so much work, so much bureaucratic work that needs to be done. And it basically eliminates the king. Yes, indeed, liberalization is necessary in the document flow, and digitization also works, but digitization also requires people, right? Mm-hmm. I will briefly comment. I think that this is an issue of legislation. It is about development of new standards for the collection. This is not only about the war, it is also about our future. I don't know how much a guarantee. I think that not everyone understands the meaning of these documents. We spoke a lot about international partnership and this networking that takes place with international institutions. There is a strong, incredible movement of support to museums within the country. I think this is unprecedented as networking. We never saw this level of support. And this is happening not because there is a certain policy of governing agencies or the ministry. This is because museums understand that this way they need to act. They don't need legislative base for this. They don't need legislative framework. They develop these policies. They are doing it on site. This is the level of mutual help. This is a unique level because museums help just with recommendations. They communicate with foreign partners on their own. They also look for generators and EcoFlow, not for only themselves. One of remarkable examples is what Museum for Change with Alexandra Kovalchuk are doing with Odessa Art Museum when they have become a media partner. They started working with various foundations quite quickly. And they are providing help across the entire country. They understood they have this potential. And that's one story. Another story is how one museum consults another museum. They visit each other, they provide help. That's all useful things. The most important thing is to maintain that solidarity for the future as well. There is a question of networking and interaction, not just at the level of emergency, but also at the level of inclusion of colleagues and development of policies. Also the level of networking, interaction, and cooperation. Networking not to survive, but in order to develop. I think that's what we would rather focus on. And I would like to speak with Olena. Olena is online because she couldn't be here with us. Unfortunately, because of her being online, she couldn't participate in the dialogue fully, sadly. But Olena, you have a sort of external view because you are in Germany and you are helping from that side, but also you have this experience as a curator of Ukrainian content abroad. How much do you have to work with this content to format it in a way that would be clear to the foreign audiences? Hello, thank you for your invitation to today's meeting. Yes, before the war in my regular life, I was an art expert. I taught art history. My dissertation is dedicated to Ukrainian avant-garde, and I am a curator. I started working with contemporary Ukrainian artists during the war. And to be honest, I had this impression over almost 20 years. I've lived in Germany during my studies here at the art department. I read the information about Ukrainian art history, and I always felt like an activist. But now interest for Ukraine have changed a lot. On the one hand, it was a certain crash course because what happened very quickly when very interesting stories happened, but a lot of things were positive here. It is unfortunate, of course, that the war became a catalyst here, but everyone wants to read Jadon, to buy something from Ukrainian designers, to watch Ukrainian cinema. People started liking Kyiv brutalism. And now, after almost a year, my observation has led me to, in Germany, I mean, the fact that there are several movements that are repetitive. And I am curious if other colleagues have the same experience and how they handle it. Because we speak a lot about our national identity. And in Germany, the issue of the national, the idea of the national, formed in a very different way, which is stipulated by something national has a sort of negative connotation here. Germany, because their nationalism led to genocide. In Ukraine, the formation of the national is based on us having to, we exist. And actually, the fact that Russian nationalism led to many genocides is something that is not well known in Germany. And Russia is often brought up here as a conqueror of national socialism, of nationalism. And Ukraine somehow is annihilated along with its role. It's neglected. You heard what the Museum of War is doing there. Of a certain context, it is very important. There is a lack of knowledge of history. We didn't talk about it, we didn't promote it. There are a lot of questions about what genocide is. Genocide of a nation, a people, a culture. It often competes in Germany about Holocaust as genocide. And there were a lot of discussions about Holocaust being the only genocide. Now, finally, this issue is moving forward. And the fact that Holodomor is finally known and finally understood is also very important. The press often comes to me with the question, does Russia really want to destroy Ukrainian identity? Because for many people, it seems like that's some sort of collateral damage. We also need to insist again that history is repeating itself. It's not the first time that Russia wants to destroy Ukrainian identity.
We all understand why we need to protect ourselves and protect ourselves with arms. So this is what I call toxic pacifism. We all know that Germany is a state that very often blocks, for example, weapons delivery. And there are a lot of demonstrations for the peace, and they want to provide humanitarian aid, but they don't want to provide weapons. So I asked them, do you want us to win with tin cans? I was curating an exhibition by Yulia Belaeva in Quadrat Gallery in Berlin. Many of you probably know this. Within the context of the conflict of the war, the owner of this gallery understood everything. We exhibited about 800 such cartridges, as I've shown to you in this gallery, and it meant that everyone uses their own weapons to fight in this war. And of course, it wasn't this hint that Germany blocks weapons delivered to Ukraine. We have disputed this for a long time, and he was afraid that people might say that he's like for waging war. In Germany, people often say that, just what I said before. We do not want war, we want peace. And we have such sayings that like soldiers don't cry or fighters don't cry, and they do not say that. So he was afraid to exhibit this Ukrainian artist and with a military team exhibition. That is why he was afraid. But on the 10th of October, when missiles hit the center of Kiev, and he loves Kiev, it has become something very personal for him. So when it becomes personal to a person, they change their mind. So he changed his mind. There was another thing that I see in Germany. This is top-down pacification. They want to bring us to peace somehow. This is one of the narratives about good Russians. And very often it is very difficult to discuss, because very often this question is everywhere. For example, they don't know whether to continue working with Russians who do not like Putin. For example, I know several Russians who do a lot in order to preserve culture in Ukraine. We have Katerina Malihina at our sessions from the Museum of Karsorsta. This is former German Russian museum. She did personally a lot for Ukraine, but I'm not talking about her. Sometimes people want this distance, but we need to respect it. We have a lot of discussions because of that. In order to overcome those things, I would like to say that I have quite a lot of energy spent. My work consists on one hand from looking for some things which are necessary to preserve our culture, to bring power generators to Ukraine, but on the other hand, I have to do a lot of communication. This communication has a lot of important things, and when we confront it, they become really political. Not always it is easy to stick to it, and I'm really happy when I manage to explain to people something. We have talked to many colleagues, and we discussed that we prepare texts for Ukrainian audience and for international audience. Sometimes we have to find a compromise or to rewrite these texts because it shall be different. And because we need to understand the context within which the exhibition will be displayed abroad. And also someone has said that sometimes it is necessary not to show scary pictures all the time. On the other hand, in Germany, the pictures are not scary at all. It seems to me that in Germany, the distance between what is happening in Ukraine and the real world in Germany is very, very big. People in Germany kind of forget that a war is an awful thing, horrible thing. It seems to me that many Germans say that it's not their war, but it's a European war. This is what Russia says. This is a conflict with NATO, which is waged on the territory of Ukraine. This is quite obvious. That is why we have to explain to people a lot what is happening. When something becomes personal, only then you start understanding it differently. So these are problems, some of the issues that I would like to discuss here. But there are also a lot of positive things. The change in attitude towards Ukraine, and many people treat all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elena, for your intervention. We don't have much time left, but I would like to touch upon this topic because you mentioned national identity, genocide, decolonization. I would also like to add blind spot to this, a blind spot on the cultural map of Europe, our history, our culture. Why? Why do we have any disputes with Russian culture? Sometimes we have to explain it from scratch. And it seems to me that your public programs, that your public lectures, discussions, not only for the big audience, but for professional and academic community, it seems to me that we need to continue working with that because we work for the long term. So how do you manage to work with this? How do you have to find compromises? Or do you insist on your own narratives? Do you call things by their names? Thank you so much for your question. First, I would like to agree with most of the challenges that were described by Elena. In Germany, we are also going through all these. And not only in Germany, but with other countries. For example, France has its own context, and sometimes it's even more difficult than in Germany, with some kind of public consensus to understand what Ukraine is. And they also have these problems of arrogant attitude towards Ukraine and as a former empire. So this is very complicated. This is a situation which happens all over Europe. But in any case, it seems to me that the key message, it is impossible to treat everything with one single message. We need to adapt this message everywhere in a delicate way. For example, even in Germany, even within one city, we have to use different messages related to decolonization, the role of Ukraine in the world history of the 20th century, the place of Ukrainian culture, the origins of Ukrainian culture, the agency of Ukrainian culture, all those questions that have been raised today. This is a very wide range of questions. This is about communication capacities. It requires a lot of work on behalf of the Ministry of Culture and also from other people who work in this area. We need to have a dialogue with our counterparts. We need to adapt messages on the go. For example, you start a discussion with one message, but during the discussion you need to adapt and you need to use different messages in order to reach the heart of these counterparts. We don't have to be comfortable for people, but we need to understand that people must have a dialogue with us without crossing the red lines. On the one hand, it is easy, it is difficult, but on the other hand, it's very interesting for me to take part of this discussion. And many colleagues from my team also are eager to work in this field. Each one has its own background, emotional experience of cooperation with Ukraine or the lack of thereof. And we need to find this key, but let me remind you, we don't have to please everyone. We need to be a little bit provocative, probably, because it's the way to go. If everything will be seen through pink lenses, it won't be able to describe everything. I would like to draw your attention to the role of museums. very often there is a request from our international partners who ask, how can we help you? Museums tell each other, let us send you some kind of scotch tape or something. In the beginning of the war, it was necessary, all this kind of help was necessary, but right now the discussion is different. I tell my colleagues, let us do what we do best. Let us do what museums actually have to do. We study history, we study facts, we raise questions, we implement conceptual products and projects. We don't only have logistical support, we don't only need this kind of support. So let us do what we all do best. This is the method that we confront right now. So the question is, people ask whether they can donate money to support us. But we need to select a topic so our workers can prepare a lecture and not to get this money just as a donation, just for nothing. They say, okay, but can you please tell us how it is all happening in Ukraine? Okay, we will tell you, but we would like you to try to ask to your audience why it is happening, because you have to try to find these questions yourself. This is a challenging discussion, but this rocking of the board is this informational campaign helps us, and there are a lot of questions inside the international institutions. When we ask international institutions to use their own experience, their own tools, their own critical thinking, and all the toolkits that they have to find the answer to the question. This is the start of an interesting discussion, a challenging discussion, but interesting at the same time. Thank you so much. It seems to me this is what not all institutions can say. I mean, not everyone can ask these difficult questions, because dialogue is important. We as a country, as a state, we must proceed from the state when we received urgent help, though we do need it. And this was mostly logistical help. We received a lot of power generators, we received a lot of equipment, and because we do some kind of coordination work and we see this, it became evident how much help we have received, but we need to make a second step to continue developing this connection, these networks. So we can think what we can give others, narratives, dialogue, the opportunities to build a dialogue. It would be the most important thing for me, the most important topic of today, because today we have to have these soft connections. We cannot neglect this chance, because of course, I hope that we won't be in a similar situation right now, but we have to use it right now in order to build something for the future. We need capable institutions, and we have people who work in these institutions. We need competency. We know the problems that we have to work with. Liberalization of the field of culture inside the country, it has been happening naturally from the very beginning. Many people have made their own decisions, and it turned out that many decisions were right. And when we take a look, we see that these were very good decisions from the security point of view. We need to have more opportunities to make more decisions like these. Decentralization in the country must must also happen in the field of culture. So thank you so much. Thank you, dear participants. Of course, it is impossible to discuss everything in an hour and a half, but it seems to me that we have managed to discuss a lot of important things. On the one hand, on the second hand, on the other hand, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. To end with, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, of this 2 days forum. It seems to me that it is very useful. I have talked to Igor during a break. He raised a lot of problematic issues that have left undiscussed. And in order to reach the international audience, we need to be on the same page internally. We need to understand what priorities we have for the second year of the war. I know that it sounds awful, but we must be ready that the war won't end tomorrow. And we must understand that we will continue working, living, and developing. And we hope that we won't live in a survival mode. We want to continue living in development mode. We want to find resources inside and outside of our country. We are really grateful to our organizers, to our participants. Thank you so much. Alena Grigorenko was with us, the Vice Minister of Culture of Ukraine. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.